even though we're introverts, that we can still master that human connection and live meaningful lives, because those experiences that we've had with those other people, those meaningful relationships, were really powerful in our lives, even though we feel like we hate those social situations. So I want you just to remove yourself from that paradigm for a moment, that you hate social situations, that you want to avoid them at all costs. And just open your mind for a second to these 3 things that I would say might help you to recognize that introversion is a superpower. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. And today I want to talk about relationships for introverts. That's right. If you feel a sense of social anxiety when you walk into a room full of people, or you feel just uncomfortable in those social situations and you feel like you'd rather be alone, you might identify as an introvert. This is certainly a way that I have identified during my life. And you may be wondering, but Adam, you speak, you are in front of people, you hang out with people, you do this podcast. How could you possibly be an introvert? Well, it hasn't always been that way. And this is certainly an exercise of knowing where my boundaries are, knowing how I operate in social situations, because I do get that sensation that when I am in the wrong group, when I am in the wrong types of social situations that aren't for me, my energy does get significantly drained. Whereas for somebody like an extrovert, somebody who really thrives in those areas, their energy may be filled up in those rooms that are full of people. But for many of us who are introverts, we walk into those rooms, our energy gets drained. We may feel that heightened sense of anxiety, and it can be debilitating. I mean, what I want to share today are 3 ways. I want to shift your thinking on this, because I really have learned in my life, especially in my adult life, as I've recovered from alcoholism and all of the things that I used to do to try to push my anxiety and all of those anxieties down and suppress them. Ever since I've recovered from a lot of that and learned a lot of these personal development tools, I've actually learned that introversion can be a superpower. And it can be a superpower when it comes to our relationships with friends, or in social situations with our coworkers, and with certain things like that. And that is why, I'm able to be more present, more productive, and happier and more free in social situations today than I used to be. And it all comes down to the fact that it's learning to be comfortable in your own skin first before you can be comfortable in those crowds and with certain people. But understanding what that superpower is and why introversion can be a benefit, in your relationships, will help you to really learn to thrive in those scenarios and live a truly abundant life when it comes to relationships. Because really, truly, life is all about relationships. Life is the meaning of life is having high quality relationships, and we don't want to squander that. And one of the biggest problems is as introverts, as people who maybe get our energy drained by those social situations, we tend to interpret our introverted nature, the nature of being selective or being anxious in those social situations. We tend to interpret that as hating those social situations, as wanting to avoid them at all costs. And the problem is that every human being needs human connection. Every human being needs human connection. I mean, it's why right when we're born, we have to have that connection with our mother or our father. It has to be we have to have that human connection. That's part of being human, and without it, we can't survive. Uh, but and so what happens when we don't have that? So we create this disconnect between our human nature, the need to find that connection, and this feeling or this belief that we have that we hate those social situations where we have to be among other people, and what that does is that causes us in a lot of scenarios, if we lean into that side of it, causes us to feel lonely, feel alone in this world, to feel like we just don't fit in, or we're misaligned, or we lack trust in other people, and and that that's a pretty painful place to live. And so to get out of that, and I lived there for a very long time, as I was suffering through my anxiety, the only way that I felt that I could operate in social situations was to drink heavily, and that was the first time I actually realized that, at least in my own life, that that was the only way that I could operate in social situations, was when I was in college. There were these things called parties, if you're familiar. And if some of us who are introverts might not be familiar with these things called parties, or we might want to avoid them at all costs. But there were these things in college called parties, and my roommates and things like that would go to them, and they would have these giant things called kegs, which held beer. And beer, for all of you people who may not know, is a drink that messes with your mind a little bit. Anyway, I'll stop being kind of a dork about that. But anyway, I found that when I drank a lot, I could actually be more social, and it worked for a while. I mean, it worked in the very beginning stages. It was a lot of fun, but then it became fun with problems. And then, of course, way later on, it just became problems. And then I just became a person who was never in social situations and drinking heavily. So I really just was, it was a very dark place for me. And if you can relate to that, I will share that there is a way out. There is help, and I would encourage you to lean into that help. But I know that, but prior to that, growing up, I was just afraid of being around other people. I really was. I was afraid of what they thought of me. I could feel the energy in the room, and it wasn't pleasant. In high school, I wasn't. I just didn't feel like I fit in, and I wasn't comfortable in my own skin, and so I kept to myself, but I felt very alone. And I had a very close-knit group of friends. And this is kind of where I'm going to get into the premise of how to look at this introversion as a superpower. Because I had a core group of friends who I was just truly, truly aligned with. And those relationships were so meaningful, so powerful. And I loved being around them. And they actually gave me energy. And they were few. They were just a few of them. It wasn't everybody, but it was just these few people that I really connected with. And the memories I have of that are really, really meaningful to me. And I remember that more than the days where I was sitting alone and feeling lonely and feeling like I didn't fit in. And so if you think back on your key relationships when you were growing up, or those key experiences in your life that were so impactful for you, that were meaningful to you, that you look back with joy and joy, well, just joy. What were the elements of those experiences that made it so meaningful? And it was probably the people that were there, the people that you were surrounded by at that time, which goes to show that there are people that, even though we're introverts, that we can still master that human connection and live meaningful lives, because those experiences that we've had with those other people, those meaningful relationships, were really powerful in our lives, even though we feel like we hate those social situations. So I want you just to remove yourself from that paradigm for a moment, that you hate social situations, that you want to avoid them at all costs, and just open your mind for a second to these three things that I would say might help you to recognize that introversion is a superpower. Because I think for us in particular, for those of us who identify as introverts, who feel like we just don't belong, I believe that introversion can be a superpower when we want to develop the right relationships. And the first reason that is because even though we don't lean into, even though we don't like to go into those social situations, the first thing, the way that we can identify that introversion as a superpower is that the relationships that we do create are much more meaningful. When we're able to let those people in, we're able to identify the people that we connect with. We're more tuned in to those connections, just instinctively. I mean, yes, when we get into a social situation and we're not comfortable, we can really, really feel it. We can really feel that sense that we're just not connected to those people. But for the people that we are, we connect to them, and we can build meaningful relationships with that. And so identifying so those particular relationships, even the one-on-one or the one-on-two or however many they are, they're deeper, they're more meaningful. And from those experiences, from those relationships, we can have that human connection that we desire, whether it be our significant other, our loved one, our wife, husband, partner, whatever that may be, or a friend, community, coworkers, things like that. We find that. So if you could use that part of it as a superpower, you could find the people in your life that could be your trustworthy confidants, the people that you want to spend time with. And you'll notice that in those meaningful relationships, the ones where we really truly have that connection, where they're deeper and more meaningful, you'll find that your energy increases with those people. There's a heaviness and a lightness to relationships, right? Just like anything else that we have in life. And if you feel that like in interacting with somebody or a group of people is heavy, then there might not be that connection. There might not be that alignment. That might not be the meaningful relationship that you need. But in certain situations, it's light. And it's almost as if as introverts, we have that instinctual feeling of lightness when we find those people, when we find our people. And if you could key into that and identify the attributes of that, you can build more of those meaningful relationships and find that you are building your energy when you're around those people, that your energy grows. And that's the whole part of building each other up, of lifting each other up. And you want to find those types of relationships and have more of them and spend more time in those. So really look for where those relationships are, where their connection is happening, so that you can know when those deeper and more meaningful relationships are happening. And then you'll recognize that first superpower of introversion. Well, the second superpower of introversion I kind of touched on it, is that we're keyed into the environments to a point where we have this additional empathy. We almost have this empathic feeling of when we walk into a room of what the energy in the room is like. And that helps us to know which environments give us energy and which environments take it away. Just like the individuals we connect with can have deeper meaning or better connection, so too can the environments that we're in. And a lot of times that comes into, again, the groups and the group dynamic that we get into. We can be very selective. And as introverts, we're very selective about the environments that we're in. And that's important, and that's okay, because the difference between us and a true extrovert is that extroverts can really thrive in any environment. They can be involved in any environment. But what might be missed in those situations is understanding and keying into the general energy that's going on in the room. When we understand that energy, we can better respond to it. Instead of taking it in and internalizing it, we can kind of step out of ourselves and say, oh, I see. There's a lot of tension in this room. And, what is the best response I can have to respond to this tension? And you can take a deep breath and respond accordingly. Or, it may be, oh, there's a tremendous amount of joy in this room and I'm feeling it too. We tend to feel it, right? So if you feel the energy, feel the energy that's happening in the room, you can be better keyed into how to respond to it. And that is one of the I know the word empathic is kind of a buzzword now. Everybody feels that, oh, I'm an empath. I feel I feel everybody else's feelings. But, as woo-hoo as it sounds, there's a lot of truth to it, especially for those who are very, very sensitive to that. I identify as that too. I've always felt that energy around, which is why I've always been very non-confrontational. I don't like confrontation because I almost feel that energy doubly because I'm feeling the rest of the room or the other person. And it's kind of why I was very standoffish in social situations. But there is that there is that empathic nature that some of us have where we just feel the room. And that can be truly a superpower because it gives us the ability to be more compassionate, to be more empathetic, and to know how best to respond in those situations. So look at that as a positive. And then finally, the third thing I want to share, the third way that really introversion can be a superpower within our relationships is that when we own it, we can have a higher quality experiences with those that we love. Higher quality experiences with those that we love. And this kind of ties back into the previous two examples that when we have deeper and more meaningful relationships, when we bring those relationships into our experiences, the experiences can be more powerful. I mean, think about it this way. Think about if you love getting out into nature. If you love, say you want to go visit the Grand Canyon, and you visit the Grand Canyon and it's great, it's beautiful, you love it. Now imagine you go visit the Grand Canyon with somebody that you have a deep and meaningful relationship with that gives you that energy, even as an introvert. Imagine how much more amplified that experience will be. Bring those meaningful relationships into your experiences, and you will amplify the quality of those experiences. And so, that could be with travel. That could be with your other passions. Like, for instance, for me, my kids and my wife and I started getting into martial arts recently. We started doing karate about a year ago, and we've been doing that together. Now I have meaningful, powerful relationships, obviously, with my wife, my kids, even though I'm an introvert. But I bring those relationships into a place actually that would spark a bit of social anxiety for me, which is into a karate dojo. I mean, there's confrontation there, obviously. We're fighting each other. There's other people there I might not blend with. But here's the thing. When I bring a meaningful relationship with me, we're almost doubly powerful because I am fixed with her and my wife's energy or my kid's energy. And, we amplify that. And so when we get into that energy surpasses the energy in that room, and everybody else there is trying to grow. So I've learned that when I bring those meaningful relationships into that room, the experience just magnifies. The experience gets so much better. And it's been true when you travel with somebody you love. I mean, we've done, van trips and other, seen other things, seen museums and gone all over the country, and bringing those meaningful relationships with me amplifies that experience. And all of this may seem very counterintuitive because when you hear the word introvert, you think, well, you don't like to be around people. You just don't like it. And that's, to an extent that may be true because in those negative experiences, the negativity is amplified. But in the positive experiences, in the positive relationships, the ones that where everything's aligned and you're connected, those experiences are amplified too. So if you can find those meaningful relationships first, and then you can key yourself into the environments where your energy is filled up. And of course, take those meaningful relationships into your experiences and give them a higher quality. You'll turn that introversion into a superpower, because you'll realize that the very things that might give you the anxiety in those social situations or make you afraid of approaching another person that you might want to connect with are the very things that will help you build that connection to a deeper and more meaningful level. And when that happens, you'll show up more authentically and you'll feel more connected, which of course is a human need, the need for human connection. Thank you for joining me today. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.